Thank you. Thank you. Wow. This is incredible. I've been coming to this conference for so many years. And to be on this stage with the people who have spoken today and the topics that they've spoken about today, it's a real privilege. And this is not about me, but I did promise to embarrass my co-host for the Product Experience podcast. This is Lily. I want a big round of applause for Lily, please. Thank you. This is revenge because Lily did a similar thing at a conference back in Germany earlier this year and put a silly picture of us up. So that's what this is all about. This talk is not about me. It's not about us. I want to talk to you today about this guy. You know this guy. You have worked with this guy. This is the worst executive that you have ever worked with. And I know you've worked with this. I asked an AI to generate this one for me. So this is the headshot of a mean executive. When I changed the prompt a tiny bit and changed it to be a mean middle-aged executive, it gave me this guy. So you definitely know this guy. I want to talk to you about this guy. There was a while back I went to work for a company. I was coming in as the product leader, and we had a couple of issues. I had a good handoff. I talked to some of the product people, and they were telling me about some of the challenges that they had. So I sat down with the CTO for our first one-to-one, and I wanted to establish a rapport with him. I wanted to figure out how are we going to work well together to overcome some of these challenges, some of these issues. And I said, tell me, how do you want to handle some of the tech debt? What's the kind of percentage of time you want to spend on it? What's your preferred way of working? Figured this would be a good way to establish a relationship. It didn't work like that. He told me that we didn't have any tech debt. Yeah, that's kind of the reaction I had. I said, okay, it's going to be one of those conversations. I asked him what he meant, and he said, everything we have works exactly as it's supposed to from the time it was spec'd out. So, okay, that's totally fine. I wasn't here. I'm not going to cast any aspersions. I have no judgment on this. But what we have today is not sufficient to get us to where we need to be to meet some of the challenges coming up. So tech debt, decision debt, I don't care. It's debt that we need to overcome. He proceeded to litigate every single word of that sentence and then pretty much everything else I said, and it just never got better. And it turned out it wasn't just me who had this relationship with him. We lost some of our best dev leaders. We lost a couple of our best product managers as well over time. We never really got to where we wanted to be. This is the worst experience I've had, but I've had plenty of other experiences that were challenging as well. And I know you have had similar experiences. So let's talk about why these things come up. So first off, you know this. You know the Venn. We love the Venn. And we are right in the middle of it because it is the coolest place to be, right? But because it's the coolest place to be, we're not the only ones who think that we belong there. Design thinks they belong there, and in fact, I think before we claimed it, UX claimed to be in the center. And sales definitely thinks they belong there. Marketing thinks they belong there, and business, they don't think they're at the bottom. Which means this is a really crowded place. No one has any ownership, and everyone thinks that they're the center. This makes things really challenging. So, hands up really quick. Who here works for a product company? Not a company where you have a product job, a company that does things the way they say in the books, the way that they do it in the podcasts and everything else. Anyone? A couple of you. How many here want to work for one of those companies? Yeah. We're here today because we care about how we do our job. We want to get better at our jobs, and we want to be in the right environments. There aren't that many of those environments. We all say that we want these jobs. We're all trying to get them, but it's tough. If you've been on Reddit lately, you've probably seen this thread. Don't worry about reading this. You don't need to. You can have all the slides, by the way. The link is at the bottom there. The link will be at the end. Let me do the quick summary of this. So I struggled for years with product management practices. So I stopped doing product management. I've become a glorified, highly paid order taker. I'll just deliver the feature everyone thinks we should do. And the result, I'm much happier, I'm less stressed, and I can get my $200K paycheck by coasting and playing the corporate game. Okay, let's address the two big things here. First off, this person is not local. We know this because of the way they spell check and because they're a product manager who makes 200 grand. But this sounds familiar. I've known people in this situation, maybe not for this much reward, but they're in this situation where they say, okay, I'm stressed, it's not working the way I want to, let's just do it this way. But if you're here today, you don't want to work this way. This isn't right. And the reason that this comes up a lot is because of what we're actually hired to do. As product people, and I don't care if you're a product manager, a designer, an engineer, whatever you are, you're here today, you're a product person. If you're here today, then you have been hired to be a change agent in your company. What you're fundamentally trying to do is change things. You're changing it by adding features and changing the product itself, but we're usually also asked to change more. We're asked to change how things are delivered within the company. We're asked to change the culture and the way things are delivered. Being a change agent is hard. It's really hard. It's painful because companies are elastic. Companies like to squish back. They're resilient. And we poke and we prod and we squish, but the company just bounces back to the way it wanted to go. I don't know if you've ever heard the idea of let's you change in a transformation. That's what everyone else wants. They want the change to happen, but none of the change to actually affect them. This is really hard for us. This leads to problems. If you were at leadership yesterday, you would have heard Matt LeMay and Georgie Smallwood talking about burnout and some of the issues. If you were here, you've been here today. If you listened to the talks earlier from people like Milan and Susanna, you would have heard, and Keji, you would have heard about some of the problems that we've had. Burnout is tough. This is an American company called Zippia. They looked through their database. This is for chief product officers. It's pretty much the same for all senior roles. The average tenure of a chief product officer is 1 to 2 years. 50% of the people in their database stayed in role for less than 2 years. How many of you have been at your job for more than 2 years? Okay, keep your hands up if you're not looking for a new job. You don't have to do this if your boss is here. It's okay. Yeah. A lot of us move around a lot. And it's not just Zippia that saw it. Business Age did a similar study. Ooh, I'm sorry, my clicker is not working now. Can we please advance once? Nope. There we go. No. There we go. We got it. Thank you. Business Age did a similar study. It found of the 1,000 CPOs they surveyed, the average tenure was 2.6 years, so a tiny bit longer. But they found CEOs was about 4 years and CTOs even longer, going towards 5. So what do we learn from this? We're not in the job long enough to really be effective, to do what we are hired to do. And whether that's because we show up and we get frustrated and we leave, or whether it's we show up and we found we've been sold the wrong bill of goods and we've been asked to leave because we haven't done the job that needed to be done. They say they want to change. They don't always want to change. This leads to problems. This leads to frustration. This is what I see when I talk to a lot of product people. And the feeling like this isn't good for you. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for you, for your company, and for your family and friends around you. And I talk to a lot of product people, and I ask them, what's holding them back? What's holding them and their teams back? And they tell me a couple of things. They tell me that they need more, and that they need more people or skills or budget or time. They tell me that they need, that their strategy is an absolute mess. And sometimes the strategy is an absolute mess. Sometimes it's not. When the strategy isn't a mess, it's maybe because it's not communicated or because you're not actually following it. And the boss comes in and says, just do this instead. And they also tell me that there's no time to actually do the job. They're full up with, their calendar is full up with meetings. They're doing the same reporting for 6 different people in 6 different formats. They're not delivering value because they're too busy being busy. None of these are actually the problem. These are symptoms. Symptoms of a much bigger problem. So to figure out what that problem is, we need to go a little bit deeper. My wife is a dentist. One of her superpowers is something called differential diagnosis. Diff-di is this amazing thing. It's when you go in and you complain of a toothache, and she doesn't just go in and start drilling out the cavity. She finds out, do you have a cavity? Is it referred pain from grinding your teeth at night? Is it something else? Is it a minor irritation, or is it a sign of a serious medical issue? She finds this out by asking you a lot of questions and doing an examination. If this was the way we worked, it would be somebody coming in saying, I don't like this, fix it. But what we do is something different. We do 5 whys, we do OODA loops, we do opportunity solution trees. We look for root cause analysis. It's basically the same thing. And if this sounds familiar, it's also the basis for, I've lost my slides entirely. Well, it's still the basis for every single episode of House MD. And there should be a picture of House up there right now. Can we get them back? Okay, I'm going to keep going anyway. There we go. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, in my coaching, the answer is almost never about working with people on a specific technique or process. It helps sometimes, but generally the problem is bigger. It's the things that are, you can read a book or you can read a blog, you can watch a video about how to master a specific thing. The actual solution is almost always about subtly changing the environment that they work in, for them and for their team. Our job as product people is not to just do product the way it says in the books. As Matt LeMay said yesterday, that's the childish version of this. We need to grow up. Growing up is not just doing it properly, it's delivering actual value. And if you're here today, I think this is something you really care about. So for the last 5 years, I've been working as a coach and a consultant, and I've been running the podcast along with Billy. I get to talk to a lot of really smart people. And I talk to people through those things. I also talk to them through a couple communities I run. One's called Product in the Ether. It's a monthly meetup for product people that I started during lockdown. And more recently, I've been doing something similar for CPOs called CPO Circles. But the point is, I get to talk to some brilliant people. And last summer, I got an invitation to spend a few days in a room with Marty Kagan and his partners at Silicon Valley Product Group and 50 of the best coaches in Europe. Is this Kedgies Gremlins? Okay, dip back. Excellent. So I got to spend some time in a room with all those people, and then a few months later, Marty and his team ran the same thing again in New York for the best coaches in the States. So I have a Slack group with 120 incredible coaches. So I get a chance to talk to all of these brilliant people. And it's amazing. When I talk to them, the things that I've learned from them are absolutely incredible. And I'd really like to share something with you today. I'd like to share with you the one thing that I've learned, the thing that makes all the difference, and will take you from being a product manager to an amazing product manager. That would be cool. Can you imagine one thing that would totally change everything? We'd all be doing it, wouldn't we? Now, it's not one thing, it's 3 things. Let's talk about the 3 things. So a lot of this has already been covered. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know. Sometimes you need to be reminded, though. Yeah, there's the 3 things. First thing is prioritization. Make sure you know what your team should be working on, what's important. You have to have your strategy in place. Just as important, though, is know what the teams should not be working on. Both of those things are critical. We talk about work in progress and load management and things like that. Make sure people are working on the priorities and only the priorities. Next one is people. Do you have the right people? Do they have the right positions? As Susanna was talking about, are they advancing up their career the right way? Are you investing in them and supporting them? Do they have the culture that allows them, as Nilan was saying, to actually do the job that they need to do? And finally, if you know what to do and you've got the people to do it with, do you have the right processes in place? Are you helping them to deliver value, or are you simply asking them to be busy and not actually ship value to customers? If you're not doing that, it's not worth it. And that's it. It's pretty simple, right? We get these 3 things done, and magically we start shipping value. And we can go home because mission's accomplished. You don't seem to believe me. Yeah, of course this isn't it. I thought this was it for the longest time. As Matt was saying yesterday, practicing product the way they say in the books, the way we talk about it on stages, it's very attractive. It really impresses our peers. It's not actually doing the job. There's a 4th thing, and this actually is the one thing that I've learned from all these really brilliant people that I get to spend time with and observe. The one thing that changes people from being good to being great is perception. Perception is the thing that really matters. It's the hardest thing to pick up. We don't talk about it very much. It's not in any of our books. It's not in our literature. It's the perception of how other people think we're doing. If sales, if marketing, if compliance, if your CEO doesn't think that the stuff you're working on, that the people you have on your team, that the processes you're following are meeting their needs, then you're not doing the job, period. It doesn't matter how good you are at the rest of the stuff. It's very easy for us to look at this and see, is it a blue or is it an orange? When people give us this kind of thing and show us something, give us data that we're not expecting, we can get defensive. I certainly have. It's been a real problem for me. But it's the same thing when I go to stakeholders. If I tell them we ran an experiment and it indicated something that they didn't want, they can get really defensive too. How do you deal with that? How do you manage that perception? This happens. This is a natural process for us. In an instant, we just have this instinct. We project our mental models, our fears and our background and our experiences onto that perception. And it results in cognitive errors, that defensiveness, these mistakes, which means we judge and respond incorrectly. We need to be really careful about how we're dealing with all these things. Perception is a superpower. There's something called the Cambrian explosion in the fossil record. Randy hates the fact that I'm talking about this, because he actually has a degree in evolutionary biology and wanted to use this metaphor. The Cambrian explosion is this thing that, in the fossil record, things were stable for millions and millions of years. There was very little diversity. And then all of a sudden, boom, over a very short period of time, there's a massive differentiation in species. And it was only relatively recently that it was figured out what happened, what caused this. And it was the development of vision for the first time. It was this huge competitive advantage and caused a real change. This is something called a punctuated equilibrium, where something changes in the environment. Generative AI is punctuated equilibrium and things change. Perception is not a reaction to punctuated equilibrium, but it was for me. It massively changed the way I work. It changed the way that I related to things. It just changed everything and gave me a lot more opportunities. It's about making sure that we can actually deliver value with people instead of just doing the process. Because it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you actually see. So let's come back to this CTO. Let me tell you a slightly different story about him. He had been not the founding member of that organization, but came in relatively early. He had built a very successful company. He had built a really strong relationship with some of the other senior leadership team there. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. His view on things was totally different than mine, but the way he looked at things saved us any number of times. And if he was here today, he'd be telling you a very different story than I'm telling you. He'd be telling you a story about this guy. I don't agree with this. I think I'm pretty good at what I do. I've been told I'm pretty good at what I do. But it doesn't matter because he never thought I was any good at what I did. So we never built a relationship. We were never able to work together to solve the problems that the company had. This wasn't good for the company. We needed to change this. I don't like being in this experience, in this situation. So I had to figure out how I could change it. What I learned, ultimately, is that perception is real. even when it's not reality. His reality was not mine, my reality was not his, but the perception remained. So I decided I didn't want to be in this situation again. Even though I knew all of this, I didn't know how to use it well. So when I left that job, I put together this canvas. And the canvas is everything we've just talked about. It's about prioritization and people and process. And it's got perception on the bottom because that's the bedrock. That's the fundamental. And don't worry, I'm giving you the canvas. You will have, on the next couple of slides, you will have a link to see it all. You can't read all of this now. That's okay. I just want to talk to you briefly about how to use this canvas. There's a few different ways to do it. You can use it by yourself. It is really valuable to take you out of your own headspace. It's like a mini coaching session by yourself. Just to ask the question from other people's perspective can sometimes unlock things for you. You can also do it with other people. You can do it filling it out together or filling it out separately and bringing it together. The answer to that, which is the right way for that, is very much it depends. It depends on your relationships with people and how you manage them and the other people in the room. How you fill it out doesn't matter so much to me. What does matter is you're changing the nature of the conversation. Now it's no longer adversarial. It's not me versus you having this conversation back and forth, and one is right and one is wrong. Now we're both standing together, shoulder to shoulder, looking at this piece of paper, looking at this screen, and looking at the issues, and hopefully being able to work on them together. I'm not going to guarantee you that this will work. I don't think this would have worked with my CTO, to be honest. But it has worked for me in a lot of other situations. No tool is perfect. Some tools are useful, and I have found this one to be really, really useful. So I want to ask you to do something for me. I want to ask you to make a commitment. I want you to do something on Monday. You already got homework from Keji. From Susanna to do something over the weekend. I want you to do something on Monday. I want you to do something at your next retro, and I want you to do something next quarter. On Monday, I'd like you to complete this sheet yourself, this canvas by yourself. Doesn't take long, just a couple of bullet points in each section. Take 15, 20 minutes tops. At your next retro, though, I want you to do this with your team. If you're a product manager, do it with your dev team. If you manage other product managers, do it with them. See what is holding you back in your environment. See what things you want to fix and how you're going to prioritize them. And next quarter, I'd like you to do this with your stakeholders. Same thing. Figure out what is 1, 2, 3 things that you as a team, as a group of people, can unblock for everyone else. How can you create a better environment so that other people can deliver value faster? Ultimately, that's what you want to do. That's what the job is. It's not about doing it right, it's about realizing value. Hopefully, this is a way to unblock you and get you there faster. I'd love to hear from you about how you do this. I'd love to see you in one of my communities. Do stay in touch. You can get the slides here. And I will give you slides. There is a Miro canvas as well and a bunch of other stuff. So just sign up there and you will get everything. Thank you very much. I hope to talk to you later.